graveyard shift at a cemetery sounds worse than it is. Most nights, it's just me, a thermos of gas station coffee, and the sound of Spanish moss dragging across the old stones when the wind picks up off the river. I've worked this place in Savannah for about 2 years. November is my favorite month out here. The tourists thin out, the heat finally breaks, and the whole city goes quiet after 10. My rounds are simple: walk the perimeter every hour, check the main gate, the side gate off the access road, the mausoleum row. Kids sometimes hop the fence around Halloween. Drunks wander in from the bars on the boulevard. Once I found a couple trying to do a seance with a Bluetooth speaker. Mostly, it's nothing. Then, in early November, I started seeing him. First time was a Tuesday, about 2:10 in the morning. I came around the north path and my flashlight caught somebody sitting on the ground, back against a headstone, hands folded in his lap. Middle-aged white guy, maybe 50, dark coat, jeans, just sitting there like he was waiting for a bus. I did what I always do, walked up polite, told him the cemetery closes at sunset, told him I'd have to ask him to leave. He looked at me, nodded, said, "Sorry, sir," stood up, walked toward the main gate at a normal pace. No arguing, no explaining. I watched him go all the way through the gate and out onto the road. Didn't see a car, just walking. I logged it and figured that was that. Next night, same time, same grave, same guy. This time, I was less polite. Told him I could call the police. Told him if I saw him again, I'd have to write him up as trespassing. He apologized again, said he'd go, and he did. Walked out just like before, hands in his coat pockets, no rush. Third night I got there, before he did. I sat on a bench across the section and waited. Around 2, he came in through the main gate. It wasn't locked. We don't lock it until 3, and technically he wasn't sneaking. He just walked in like a man going to visit his mother, sat down at the same stone, folded his hands. I gave it a minute, then I walked over. "Sir, third time, you cannot be here at this hour." "I know." "Then why do you keep coming back?" He looked up at me, tired eyes, not crying, not drunk, not high, just tired in a way I've only ever seen on people who've been sitting with something for a long time. "I won't be long," he said. "Please." Something about the way he said it. I don't know. I stood there another few seconds, and then I told him 15 minutes. 15 minutes, and then he goes. He thanked me. I walked back toward the office and did paperwork, and when I looked at the clock, it had been closer to an hour. I went back out. He was gone. This went on for maybe a week and a half. He'd come around 2, sit at the same stone, and if I bothered him, he'd leave without a fuss. If I left him alone, he'd stay 2, 3 hours, then walk out on his own. Never left flowers, never touched the stone, just sat. I got curious about the grave. You have to understand, in my job, you learn not to be curious. People bury their people, and the reasons are their own. But he kept coming back, and I kept letting him, and after a while, I wanted to know who he was sitting with. So one morning after my shift, when the sun was up and the whole place looked different, I walked over to that section and read the stone. The name I won't write here, the dates I remember exactly. Born in 1971, died in early November of that same year I was working. 3 days before the first time I'd seen him sitting there, I read it twice. Then I pulled out my phone and checked the date on the calendar app, just to be sure. 3 days. He'd been coming since 3 days after the burial. That part made a kind of sense to me. The funeral happens, family scatters, and the person who can't sleep starts showing up alone. Grief does what it does. But something else bothered me, and I couldn't figure out what. So I stood there in the morning sun, staring at the stone. And then I noticed it. There was no photo. A lot of the newer stones in that section have a little oval photo set into the granite. Wife, husband, whoever. This one was blank. Just the name and the dates and a short line I don't want to repeat. No picture. I told myself that was normal. Some families skip the photo. Personal choice. Maybe cost. Maybe they didn't have a good one. I went home and slept. That night I went back to work and I couldn't stop thinking about it. Around 1:30, I walked out to the section early and stood a few rows away in the shadow of a big live oak. I wanted to see him arrive. He came at 2, same as always, same coat. Sat down, folded his hands. I stood there in the dark and watched him for maybe 10 minutes. He didn't do anything, didn't speak, didn't cry, just sat with his back against the stone like it was a couch he'd sat on 1,000 times before. Then I walked over. "Hey," he looked up. "Who's buried here?" I said it flat, not angry, not accusing, just tired. I wanted to be done with it, one way or the other. He looked at the stone next to him for a long moment. Then he looked back at me and he said it the way you'd tell somebody the time. "I am." That's it. 2 words. Same tired voice. No smile, no pause for effect, like I'd asked him if he had a lighter. I didn't say anything back. I couldn't. He stood up, brushed off the back of his jeans, and walked toward the main gate at a normal pace. Not fast, not slow. I watched him go through the gate and out onto the road, and then he was gone. I stood by the stone for a while. Then I went back to the office, and I sat in the chair and I didn't move until my shift ended at 6. He didn't come the next night, or the one after. I waited a full week, sitting out there in the dark like an idiot with my flashlight off, and he never came back. The name on that stone belongs to a real person. I looked him up online in the morning after my shift. Local guy, born the year the stone says, died 3 days before I first saw the man sitting there. No photo in the obituary either, just a short paragraph and an age. The age matched the man I'd been talking to for almost 2 weeks. I still work the cemetery. I still do my rounds. I don't walk that section after midnight anymore. I go the long way around, past the mausoleums, past the older graves where nobody visits. If somebody sits at that stone again, I don't want to know about it. The part I keep coming back to isn't what he said. It's that I let him sit there for almost 2 weeks and never once asked until the end. He walked in through the front gate every night, like the place belonged to him. Maybe it did. The lockers at MIA were basically dead that whole summer. July 2020, if you remember what airports looked like then, nobody was flying unless they had to. My shift was 10 at night to 6 in the morning, 3rd level of the parking garage, that long fluorescent hallway near the rental car return where the storage bank sits. Most nights, I saw maybe 3 customers. Some nights, 0. The company I worked for handled the pay lockers, the ones you rent by the day or month with a credit card at a kiosk. Not TSA, not the airport itself. We were a contractor. Boring job. I read a lot. Protocol on an expired rental was simple. 30 days past the paid period, we cut the lock with a rotary tool, logged the contents in a 2-page form, bagged everything, and it went to the lost property office, over by baggage claim. Most of what people forgot was garbage. Chargers, a hoodie, a pair of running shoes once. I remember a wedding dress in a garment bag, which felt sad, but that was the worst of it usually. The locker in question was C-14, middle row, rented in early May, and paid for exactly 1 month. No auto-renew, no email on file that responded. The system flagged it on a Tuesday, and my supervisor, Ray, told me over the phone to just handle it before end of shift, save him the trip. I brought the cart down around 2 in the morning. The garage was so quiet you could hear the ventilation fans 2 levels up. Cut the lock, the little brass one people buy from a vending machine down the hall. It popped off after maybe 8 seconds. Inside, there were 2 things. That was it. No suitcase, no clothes, no forgotten laptop. Just a padded manila envelope, taped shut on the flap with clear packing tape, and a small handheld voice recorder sitting on top of it. Silver, plastic. The kind reporters used to carry before phones ate that market. Sony logo on the front. A red sticker on the back that had gone half yellow with age. I stood there for a second. In 3 years of doing this job, I had never seen a locker with only that in it. People don't rent a locker for a month to store nothing. They rent it because they have something that doesn't fit anywhere else in their life. I should have just bagged both items and finished the paperwork. That's what the protocol says. You don't inventory contents beyond a general description. You don't open sealed items. You don't operate personal electronics. I picked up the recorder anyway. Curiosity, that dumb, everyday kind. There was 1 file on it. Just 1. The screen showed the length, something like 14 minutes. I sat down on the little folding stool I kept by the cart, put 1 earbud in from my own phone because the recorder had a headphone port, and hit play. A man's voice, older, maybe 50s. Maybe a heavy smoker at some point. Calm the way a doctor is calm when he's telling you the results are not great. No music, no background noise, just him and the small hiss of a room. He said the date first, February that same year. He said an address in Hialeah, a specific street I actually knew because a friend of mine used to live 2 blocks over. Then he named a man. First name, last name, said what this man did for a living, said what he was involved in on the side of that. Then he named a second man, said how the two of them were connected. Then he named a woman, and this is the part where my hands got cold, because he said what happened to her, and he said where her car was found, and he said which of the 2 men had driven it there. He listed dates. He listed a boat name. He listed a bank in Panama and a person at that bank by first name only. He talked about a shipment in April that went through Port Everglades and gave the container number. He never raised his voice once. He said all of it like a man reading a grocery list he had already checked twice. Near the end, the tone shifted slightly, only slightly. He said, "This is insurance. If you're hearing this, then I'm gone. Whoever you are, take this to the police, not to anyone else, not a lawyer, not a reporter, police." Then he said, "I'm sorry for putting this on you." That was the line that got me, not the crimes. That line, the apology, because it meant he had thought about the person on the other end of it. Some stranger opening a locker one random night. He had pictured me, or someone like me, and he was sorry. The file ended. There was another minute of silence at the tail that the recorder kept counting through, and then it stopped on its own. I sat on the stool for a while. I could hear the ventilation fans again. My earbud cord was still hanging from the recorder. I did not press play a second time. I want to be clear about that because I have thought about it since, and I still don't fully know why. Some of it was training. You're not supposed to touch the contents. Some of it was that I didn't want those names in my head twice. Some of it was that I already believed him, and hearing it again felt like agreeing to something I hadn't agreed to yet. I put the recorder back on top of the envelope. I did not open the envelope. I taped both of them together with a strip from my own roll and put them in an evidence bag from the cart, sealed it, initialed it, and wrote the time. Then I walked to the wall phone at the end of the hall and called the airport police substation instead of my supervisor. The dispatcher asked me twice if I was reporting a crime in progress. I said no. I said I had found something in an expired locker that I thought they needed to hear. She was quiet for a second and then said someone would be down. 2 officers came, both in uniform, one older with a gray mustache, one younger. I gave them the bag and told them there was a recording on the device, one file, about 14 minutes, and I told them roughly what was on it without repeating any of the names. The older one asked if I had made a copy. I said no. He looked at me for a beat and said, "Good." They took the bag to a small office off the baggage claim corridor. I waited outside. About 20 minutes in, the younger officer came out and walked past me to the exit without looking at me. Through the door, I could see the older one on his cell phone, not the desk phone, his own cell, standing very still with his back to the glass. He was on that call for a long time. When they came out, the older officer had me sign a chain of custody form and a short witness statement. He asked for my hours, my supervisor's name, my address. He was polite. He thanked me. He said someone might follow up and someone might not, and either way, I should not talk about this. Not to Ray, not to my girlfriend, not to anyone. I said, "Okay." He shook my hand, which felt strange, and they left with the bag. I finished my shift. I went home. I slept badly for about a week. About 2 months later, I saw a piece on the local news, one of those late slots after the weather. 2 men had been arrested in connection with a case out of Broward County. Names on the screen. I recognized both of them from the recording. The anchor said the arrests came after new evidence surfaced in an unrelated matter. She used those exact words, an unrelated matter, and moved on to a story about a dog. I looked. After that, I looked more than I should have. I never found anything about a man matching who I imagined had rented C-14. No obituary in the window that fit. No missing persons report that lined up. No news item at all. Whoever he was, he did not exist in the version of the story that reached the public. I still work nights sometimes. Different job. different city. When I cut a lock now, I stand a little further back before I open the door. The BWI 2 sorting center off Browning Highway runs 3 shifts, and the graveyard 1 is mine. 10 at night to 6 in the morning, 4 nights a week since August of 2020. By November of 2021, I could tell you the sound of every conveyor belt on that floor by the pitch of its motor. When you stand next to the same machine for 8 hours, you learn it the way you learn a person's breathing. That night was a Tuesday. Cold for Baltimore, maybe 38 degrees when I clocked in, and the loading doors kept letting the wind in every time a trailer backed up. The whole floor smelled like diesel and cardboard and the burnt coffee thing that came out of the vending machine on the mezzanine. My station was line 4, secondary induct. Boxes came off the trailer, went up the belt, and I made sure the scanner arch caught every barcode. If a package didn't scan, a red light poped, I pulled it off the belt, put it on the reject cart, and the exception team came by every hour to clear it. That's the whole job. You get into a rhythm, and your brain kind of leaves your body for a while. Around 2 in the morning, in the middle of a wave from a Chewy trailer, the red light popped on my arch. I reached over, grabbed the package, and set it on the reject cart without really looking. Then I looked. Plain brown box, medium size, maybe 18 inches on the long side. Heavier than the volume should be, no shipping label, not a damaged label, not a peeled label, just no label, no barcode strip, no Amazon smile, nothing printed on any side. The tape across the seams was that thick, reinforced kind with the fiber threads running through it, applied clean and straight, like somebody who does this for a living wrapped it. I stood there holding it because that doesn't happen. Packages don't just appear on our belt without any label. They come off trailers that were already scanned and manifested at another facility. To get a totally blank box onto line 4 at 2 a.m., somebody had to physically walk it in and put it on the belt. I looked up at the trailer bay. Nobody. Just the belt running, the box behind me on the cart, and Kev at the next station down, headphones in, bouncing on his heels the way he did when he was trying to stay awake. I told myself somebody upstream had peeled a wet label off and shoved it back on the line so it wouldn't get flagged as a lost item. That happens. Lazy fix, but it happens. I went back to work. 10 minutes later, I went to grab a bottle of water from the cart shelf, and I passed the reject cart. The box had shifted. Carts get bumped, other packages get thrown on top. That's normal, but there was nothing on top of it, and it wasn't where I'd set it. I moved it back to the corner and put a smaller package on top to weigh it down. Went back to my station. I wasn't scared yet, honestly. I was annoyed. It felt like somebody was messing with me, like Kev or one of the guys from line 3 was going to come around the corner laughing. That was the mood. Around 2:30, I went for the cart because it was full. An exception team was running late. I was going to wheel it over to their staging area myself. When I grabbed the handle, the whole cart was still. The wheels weren't moving, but the box in the corner rocked. Just a little, like whatever was inside had leaned against one wall. I stopped. I put my hand flat on the top of the box, just resting it there, and I pressed down. Not hard, just enough to feel. Something inside shifted away from the pressure. I pulled my hand back like the cardboard was hot. Then I stood there in the middle of that floor, under those white LED lights that make everything look like a hospital, and I listened. The belt was running. The HVAC was running. Somebody at the far end of the building was talking on a radio, and under all of it, when I leaned my ear down close, I could hear breathing. Slow, regular, small. Now I got scared. Not the movie kind of scared. The kind where your hands go a little cold and you can't decide what your face is doing, because in that half second, all the worst things you've ever read about were in the box. Every headline, every story your mom told you when you were a kid to keep you from talking to strangers. I looked at Kev. He was still bouncing, still had his headphones in. The protocol was clear. Unidentified package, no label, suspicious contents. You call security and they handle it. You don't touch it. You don't open it, especially not in November of 2021 when everybody was still jumpy about packages showing up at facilities for reasons I don't need to explain, but that breathing. Whatever was in there was alive, and it was small. And if I called it in the way I was supposed to, it was going to sit on a shelf in security for at least an hour while they got somebody down there. And then it was going to sit in another room longer than that, and I didn't know how long it had already been in the box. I wheeled the cart into the corner between the reject shelves and the wall, where the camera angle is bad. I've worked there long enough to know where the angles are bad. I took my box cutter off my belt, set the blade to the shortest setting, and I ran it along the tape on the top seam. Slow, barely deep enough to cut the tape and nothing under it. I lifted the flaps. Inside was a soft-sided pet carrier, the kind you'd take on an airplane. Black mesh sides, zipped shut. Sitting in the carrier was a cat. Gray, kind of long-haired, one ear a little chewed up. A small plastic water dish clipped to the inside, still about half full, a Ziploc bag of dry food, a folded towel underneath so he wasn't sliding around. The cat looked up at me and didn't make a sound, didn't hiss, just looked. Taped to the inside of the box lid, where I hadn't seen it because I'd opened from the top, was a piece of notebook paper folded in half. I pulled it out. Handwriting, blue ballpoint, neat but rushed. Please take care of him. I can't bring him where I'm going. No name, no signature, nothing on the back. I stood there with that note in my hand for I don't know how long. Long enough that Kev noticed and pulled out an earbud and asked if I was good. I told him a damaged parcel had somebody's stuff spilled out, and he shrugged and went back to bouncing. I closed the box back up. I put the whole thing, cat and carrier and all, on the bottom shelf of the reject cart, and I covered it with 2 flat cardboard mailers, so you couldn't see it from a walking angle. I did not write it up. I did not tag it. When my shift ended at 6, I clocked out, walked to my car in the employee lot with the box under my arm like it was my own lunch cooler, and I put it on the passenger seat. His name is Miso now. I didn't pick it. My sister did when she came over that first weekend. He's still with me. He sleeps on the back of the couch, and he's afraid of the vacuum, and he purrs so loud you can hear it in the next room. I never told anybody at work. I never looked at the camera footage from that night, and I never asked upstream who was on the trailer. I've thought about it 100 times. Who wrote that note, where they were going, why they picked our belt at 2 in the morning. I don't have answers. Some nights, when the house is quiet and Miso's curled up on my chest, I put my hand on his side and I feel him breathing. Slow, regular, small.